It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. I'm sure you saw on Thursday, Donald Trump held a big presser down at Mar-a-Lago, and all the very best words, all of the very best policies, lots of energy, lots of things are going to make people's lives better. Quite frankly, I got to tell you, I watched about 40 minutes of it, and I tapped out earlier. I woke up early from my sleep to watch and to see if he had anything worth saying or anything at least worth hearing. And look, it was the same old tired binary grievance politicking that I think people are finally getting fed up with. And, I turned him off. I went back to sleep, and, I woke up later, like an hour later, he's still blathering. And again, nothing new to be reported. He was asked, why haven't you been out campaigning this week? And he's like, because I'm leading by a lot. I'm going, delusional is it looks good on you. And he was asked if they're doing anything to change their strategy, and he said, I haven't recalibrated strategy at all. And you go, good, because you're losing, and that's a good thing, because finally maybe America is taking a look at what is really what I watched was very boring. In fact, to use Trump words, the most boring, the very boringest, and he's going to get beaten very badly because, when November comes around, I think people are going to get even more tired of this very bad, very, very, very tired shtick. I think it's time for Donald Trump to get some new material. Talk about how you're going to make people's lives better, not old grievances. Don't, for instance, go back to January 6th. It doesn't look good on you. When you riled a bunch of people up, sent them over to the Capitol, that you said you were going to go with them, and you were going to lead them, and all that. I don't know why you would invoke Dr. Martin Luther King's name, but I don't believe your crowd was bigger. I know you're struggling a little bit that hers are bigger, that she's getting much bigger size crowds, but maybe have an idea. Understand, grievance politics will get you so far, and it's gotten him pretty far. But I think at this point he just looks desperate and kind of pathetic. And when he was asked, so what are you doing? What we're doing? What do you say? We're doing commercials like no one has ever seen before. I don't know what that means. You mean you're lying? No, we see that from you all the time. And, it's the same, line after line, point after point, immigration, the country's being flooded. People are pouring. This is one of my favorite lines. People are pouring into the country from countries no one has ever heard of. And I'm going, and I went back and I looked at it. I'm going, did he really say that? And you go, yeah, he really said that. And he said a lot of stuff. I mean, what I tweeted out is he's treating us to a diarrhea word salad of name calling, fantasy, fear, and desperation. And that's what we saw. We saw a guy who knows he's losing and losing badly, and out of desperation held this press conference to try and fear us into believing, the sky is falling, everything's bad, it's the worst ever. And he does this. It's these binary positions that he puts people in. And look, his followers do the same thing. The country has never seen a more divided period. You mean not more than the Civil War? The country's economy has never been worse. You mean not worse than the Great Depression or the Great Recession of our lifetime a couple years ago? Never as bad as it is right now? And he does this. He paints this picture of he was the God on the high hill, and everyone else is horrible and attacking us. In fact, what did he say at one point there? Gangs everywhere. Gangs in our cities, gangs in our states, gangs in our country. He said, gangs in the form of other countries. You mean other countries, Donald? Is that what you mean? But this is the MO, isn't it? The sky's falling. Only he can fix it. He promises everything, does nothing, and then blames Democrats. And then repeat. That's what we got to see. And it's what we got a steady diet of from all of his blathering, is this idea that somehow, he alone can fix it, that he alone is the one who's able to solve all our problems, and all we have to do is, vote for him. Or don't bother voting, or do vote. Or, again, having paid attention to what he actually says, I don't really know. And this is where, if you're not wearing the red hat and having the red ink bleed into your head, maybe there's aluminum foil in those red hats. I don't know. But I'm hoping we're in a moment, because there is real energy around this campaign. Maybe we're in a moment where people are going to actually start paying attention. Now, I've seen a lot of reporting on just how crazy that press conference was, which gives me hope, gives me a little bit of hope that maybe, I don't know, maybe, just maybe, we're going to pay attention. Maybe we're going to start actually paying attention to what he says and how crazy it sounds. Because, look, that Thursday press conference, the one report I saw, Trump's public meltdown. Yeah, he was devolving right before our very eyes. And it's going to get worse. And as I've been saying over the last week or so, it's going to be interesting to watch how the red hat folks, once they take the red hats off, start to say, I'm off the Trump train. I was one of the first off the Trump train. He had some good ideas in the old days, but, too far. I think we're going to see that, especially as our media now turns on him. Before, just good for ratings. Big crowds, lots of energy, lots of people paying attention. Now there's a new star in town. Only she's talking about how you're going to make people's lives better. Because, look, I truly believe at the beginning, Trump got the average working person's ear because he said, hey, you've been getting screwed, and here's how. And then offered them some hope. Didn't deliver on it. Has no plan to deliver on it. But did have his thumb on the pulse. Now, had he, when he took office in 2017, come out with a big, huge, chunky, bold infrastructure plan, he'd be unbeatable. He would have been unbeatable no matter what, because he was doing something. And this is the message for Democrats and the message of Tim Walz. Tim Walz, as governor of Minnesota, got to work. When they handed him the keys to the steamroller, he rolled on. So the message for Democrats in this is, you got to have your thumb on the pulse, but you got to get to work. You got to make lives better. You've got to move the policies that we want moved. We want to make collective bargaining easier. We want to make the idea that the family leave and all kinds of those things that working class people have talked about for years. An economy, well, where if you work hard and play by the rules, damn it, you do get ahead. We're going to see. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Mary Catherine Ricker is going to be here, Executive Director of the Albert Shanker Institute, former head of the Minnesota Education Department there. She's going to be here to talk a little bit about Tim Walz and maybe what we can see as VP. Good stuff. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on Thursday, the internet's had a lot of fun with Laura Ingram. Because evidently, Laura Ingram knows Minnesota. In fact, she said, if you know Minnesota well, and I know it well, she said, especially Milwaukee, it's changed. In fact, Milwaukee has changed so much, changed states. It's in Wisconsin. Now, again, she knows Minnesota. So geography, not her strong suit, which is why we should probably get an educator to come in and share some thoughts on Minnesota education policy, and the VP guy who was a teacher in Minneapolis and Minnesota. That's why I've asked my good friend Mary Catherine Ricker to come share some thoughts. Past president of the St. Paul Federation of Teachers, also former commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Education. If anyone knows Minnesota and education, it's Mary Catherine. Mary Catherine, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks for calling me, Rick. It's great to see you again.
So evidently you guys got Milwaukee. What'd you have to give up for it? I
know, absolutely nothing. Absolutely. We will, if Milwaukee wants to come to Minnesota, we will make room for you, Milwaukee.
How
but
welcoming.
Until then, the last time I checked, Milwaukee was firmly surrounded by the rest of Wisconsin.
No, I'm sure that was just a slip of the tongue. I'm sure it was a mistake. I'm giving her credit for maybe more than she knows. But again, this is why what's the word? Geography?
Geography. Yep.
This is why education, this is why this stuff kind of matters.
Absolutely. I think, well, and the other thing you have to know about Minnesotans is that we really don't let mistakes like that slide. You like name the wrong, state food. We are going to call you on it. You mistake one city for the other. We're gonna make sure to correct you. So I have absolutely full confidence in my fellow Minnesotans that will be corrected multiple times over.
So what is the state food of Minnesota?
Well, so what you need to know is that was a reference to, I think it was the New York Times once said that grape salad was the state food, and Minnesotans lost it on the New York Times because, of course, we love our hot dish. We're incredibly proud of our wild rice that gets harvested in Minnesota. Our state muffin is the blueberry muffin. You could have sort of named any number of things, and the New York Times picked the absolute wrong thing. So
yeah,
one more example you can Google of Minnesotans wanting to set the record straight. And now we are going to have the opportunity to have a Minnesotan campaign, and all of us do our work, win, and have another Minnesotan in the vice presidency who will also, I'm sure, spend a lot of time setting the record straight, especially since as a social studies teacher, he knows his geography as well as a lot of other social studies really well.
No, and look, a guy that I got to tell you, he was my second choice. I wanted Pete Buttigieg just so I could see him debate J.D. Vance. That's the only reason that Buttigieg got the nod, because I think he's the smiling attack dog. He would have been fantastic. But I got to tell you, Tim Walz, the guy that radically, extremely normal. And it's weird because you got the folks over at Judicial Watch saying that Tim Walz seems to have a character problem. And I'm like, if Judicial Watch is saying it, maybe his character problem is he's a decent guy. He's a good person who cares about people. Maybe that's it.
I love that. Absolutely. I think that definition of character problem is actually perfect. That he is a decent guy, a great guy to have a conversation with, and someone who's absolutely thoughtful about governing the state of Minnesota. So there are a lot of reasons to see why Vice President Harris chose him to run alongside her on this ticket. And so I'm really looking forward to watching them campaign together. And govern together.
Now, immediately when he was named, all we kept hearing from the right is that Minnesota, especially Minneapolis, is a burning apocalyptic hellscape. Where there's poverty on every corner, and it's a horrible, horrible burning place, evidently. And look, I've been to Minnesota. I've been to Minneapolis. We've got an affiliate in Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Fantastic!
A great place. Loved it. Had a wonderful time there. I guess I missed the burning apocalyptic hellscape that's being laid out for us.
Well, this will be another thing that folks from Minneapolis will again correct as they hear it, as they take pictures from their walks around the chain of lakes, or perhaps from the ice cream they get from any number of incredible ice cream places, or maybe even when they venture over to their sister city in St. Paul and show how both twins have a lot going on, and we're really proud of where we are, and we are committed to continuing to improve our cities and our state.
Now, I don't know if you heard Donald Trump's press conference on Thursday, but evidently your governor is the most liberal, most radical, most leftist, most horrible governor ever. He's going to be a disaster. What was the ad that they sent out? Something along, a burning hellscape of horrible. Walz will be the worst VP in history. He will unleash hell on earth.
Oh my gosh. I will say I missed that, but probably because Vice President Harris and Governor Walz have so many good things to say, focused on the work we can all do together and the future of this country when they get elected, that doesn't leave a lot of time for me to hear things like that former President Trump has to say.
Yeah. No, I'm on a lot of those email chains, so I get all this craziness. But here's the thing. Walz, according to Judicial Watch, seems to have a character problem. And that character problem, seems to be, I think, from Judicial Watch's point of view, feeding children. Because I know that we have our Republican friends who, basically ripped away from poor and hungry children that child tax credit that cut poverty in half. But your governor, actually breakfast, lunch for everybody. Feeding kids seems to be a character problem for the folks at Judicial Watch.
Here's what I love about the fact that Minnesota stepped up under the leadership of the Walz-Flanagan administration. Minnesota stepped up to feed students at school. Is one of the commitments that Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan have consistently made from day one of their administration is this whole child, whole family approach. And so feeding students is absolutely about nutrition, and it's about education, and it's about solving problems for families, and it's about solving problems for our school districts and our charter schools who were trying to manage lunch debt in their communities. And it's just one example of so many. I don't know how much time we have tonight, of how that administration, how Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan work to really address the whole issue, not just sort of compartmentalized decision making.
No, look, I grew up as a kid in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland. You look at me now, you wouldn't know that I missed a meal or two as a kid. And we missed a lot of meals as a kid. And the school lunch programs at the time were humiliating. They were degrading. They were divisive. And the fact that everyone now in Minnesota schools gets breakfast and lunch at school without that division, I think is an incredibly important part of and it says an awful lot of who Tim Walz and really the state of Minnesota is.
Absolutely. And they did this at the same time. They instituted a number of other educational measures, right? So it was about feeding kids, to take those questions, those issues, that cost off the table for students and their families. And again, that, the tracking down of lunch debt that that our district schools and our charter schools were having to manage. And at the same time, they addressed, evidence-based reading practices. They continue to address diversifying the teaching profession and strengthening the teaching profession. And so, again, they look at this holistic, and they take this holistic approach to, strengthening our communities and to solving problems. And he's going to take that right onto this ticket with Vice President Harris, and they're going to make an amazing governing team.
No, I'm thrilled. I think she hit it out of the park when she chose him. Because as I say all the time, every presidential candidate, their first major decision is who's going to stand by them through the campaign. And I think Tim Walz is probably the best VP pull of my lifetime. So for me, it's one of these things where you go, good stuff, good on her. She did the right thing. And I think it's going to pay dividends. But, I look at Tim Walz, and the more I hear about him, the more I love this guy. Back in the 90s, while he's the head football coach of a high school teaching social studies, he's also the faculty advisor of the Gay Student Alliance, or whatever that is. Now, again, not my issue.
The GSA. Yeah.
But something that shows that this guy cares enough to go, look, I may not agree with it, but we're going to make education accessible for everyone and a place where everyone can learn, and well beyond the time where it was popular. That just shows an awful lot about
what I appreciate
character.
About you bringing up that sort of all of those pieces is it is an example that this whole child approach that some people are just seeing from Governor Walz right now is a value he's lived his whole career, right? Like this idea that he was going to be a strong social studies teacher, and he was also going to, support students in extracurricular activities where he could add his own talent to them, right? Whether it was coaching football, whether it was, leading as, working alongside the Gay Straight Alliance, then he takes this whole child approach to sort of growing the next generation of adults in this country. And he did that as a classroom teacher. I think you can see that in his congressional record. I certainly got to see it up close as working alongside him as governor. And you're going to see that in a Vice President Walz as well.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up, again, back to the Judicial Watch for him, he seems to have a character problem. And the character problem, again, he's a decent guy, a good person, the kind of person that you want at the front of the classroom, the person that you want as a neighbor, the person that you want in your state, local, federal government, a guy you want in the White House.
Well, I will just say he was the person Minnesotans wanted as a governor so much that they elected him twice. So, and before that, the person that, Southern Minnesota wanted as their congressperson, that they elected him multiple times. So that is, I think you can look at that discussion from the standpoint of he wanted to offer his service as an elected official, and Minnesotans have again and again said yes to that.
Now I don't know him personally. I know people who have met him, have interacted with him. They say he's a good guy, he's a decent guy, but he's a tough guy. Somebody who doesn't take a lot of guff and is willing to give it back. As I've been saying, a Gen X guy. Gen X, the generation of, mess around and find out.
We appreciate that. That's right.
And, look, as a solid Gen Xer, I'm in that world. When the Hillary folks were saying, when they go low, we go high, I was saying, no. When they go low, you smash their face into the ground and stomp on them. I'm hoping Tim Walz, as a football coach, remembers what he taught his linemen. When they go for your knees and they go low, you put them down.
I'm sure he does. And at the same time, I get there's a lot being made of maybe different comments he's made that are really popular. And again, as someone who got to work really closely to him, he is absolutely dedicated to finding common ground with people as well. And I think that's what, so maybe people are just starting to get to know him through some of the popular things he has said. And as they continue to get to know him, they will see that, to your point, that serious governance side of him, that person who wants to find common ground. And again, he and Peggy Flanagan ran on a notion of One Minnesota because they were so dedicated to finding ways that we could sort of meet each other in agreement and make progress together. And so start to get to know him, great, but then keep watching and keep learning to see what governance under Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan looked like, to get an idea of who you're going to get for a vice president alongside of President Harris.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because the last line of question I wanted to get into is because one of the things that I love about Walz, the same thing I loved about Whitmer in Michigan, is when you gave them the keys to the car, they knew how to drive it. When you gave them the keys to the steamroller, they knew what to do with it. And they paved a road to a better life for working people. And I look at, again, Minnesota passed paid family and sick leave. That's something I would love to see and have wanted to see on the national level since we passed it back in '92. This is one of those things where you go, hey, we can do better.
Absolutely, we can do better. And again, it comes with also listening to working people and hearing what they have to say about their conditions, right? And what needs improving. I think you saw a lot of those, get addressed in Minnesota over years. I think you saw Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan really listen to people. And we had made sure that we were listening to education communities to determine what some of the best approaches were to solving some of education's most pernicious problems. And they did that in every aspect, or they're continuing to do it, of course, in every aspect of improving people's lives in Minnesota.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I go back to this frame, Judicial Watch frame, that he seems to have a character problem. And maybe I'm fixated on this because everything I see of this man is a good, decent family man.
Sounds like some projection, actually, right? That actually they maybe they're worried about their character problem, so they keep projecting it onto him, because I have not heard anyone else say that.
No, it's the attack that they're trying to use. They're trying to attack this man who, look, the fact that the guy doesn't own any real estate, any stock, the fact that the guy's probably going to be the poorest vice president, at least in my lifetime, but probably not, if not history, that tells me this guy knows what it's like to go to work and worry about paying his bills at the end of the week. He goes into a classroom and had to dig into his pocket to get things that he needed. This tells me this guy knows what it's like to walk a mile in my shoes.
Absolutely. I mean, again, as we worked together professionally, and we happen to have two children who are the same age, so our conversations about college affordability were very personal to us, in addition to some of the work we were doing together.
Yep. No,
he understands.
This is a great choice. I love this guy. And thank you, Minnesota, for giving us to us. Mary Catherine Ricker, I appreciate the time. It's always great talking with you. I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Rick. Take care. And let's go win. There
you go. Our good friend, Mary Catherine Ricker. She is the executive director over there at the Albert Shanker Institute. You can check out their website, shankerinstitute.org. Want to hear your thoughts. Are you on the Walz bandwagon? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Back after this.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I guess I'm fixated on the character problem thing that Judicial Watch says Tim Walz has. Because when someone like Judicial Watch comes out and says, Tim Walz seems to have a character problem, makes me wonder if it's not them with the character problem, because this guy, for all intent and purposes, from everything I've seen, a decent family man, decent community guy, and an excellent teacher and political leader. So for me, this attempt to tear him down, kind of angering, kind of frustrating, especially from the people who want to destroy education and privatize and profitize our schools. That's why I've asked Fed Ingram to come talk with us. Fed is the secretary treasurer there at the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers. Fed, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor.
So let's start with the obvious. Tim Walz, former AFT member, former classroom teacher, social study teacher, football coach, state championship football coach. This is kind of a big deal, isn't it?
It's a huge deal. So as a former band director, I can totally agree with all the accolades that he's getting being an educator, because we know what it takes to do those, not only in school hours, but the after school hours, and the dedication it takes to make sure that students thrive from one grade to another and matriculate through high school. So kudos to Vice President Harris for her choice of Tim Walz.
No, I mean, I think she completely knocked it out of the park on this. In my view, history, I think when they win in November, we'll see this guy as one of the best VP polls, at least of my lifetime, as I've been saying. But I think this bit that, look, this guy's an educator. This guy's a visionary educator, visionary political leader. That's somebody that I want in the White House. And I point back to, back in the 90s, as the head football coach and student advisor to the Gay Straight Alliance, that to me says that this is a decent guy who cares about everyone and is ahead of the curve on doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Listen, in his track record, he's done the right thing for right thing's sake. So it speaks to his heart, speaks to his character, it speaks to his background and what he identifies as a moral center. And so I think that is going to help this country in terms of decision making, how we broaden out the spectrum of public education through funding, through getting more teachers, making sure that all kids in every zip code, no matter your background, no matter who you love, we have a person who is not only empathetic, but who understands it from the inside out, and who has really put his money and his heart where his mouth is. He was a longtime teacher. His wife is a longtime teacher. So it's in the bloodstream. And so we couldn't be happier that we have a teacher represented. There are millions of teachers in this country who are standing up, standing out, and getting ready to go back to school with this important information. Yeah. And so I think you're going to have a fired up constituency, and people are going to be ready to go.
No, I mean, finally, someone who's going to have a teacher's back, because I'm not telling you anything you'd already know, but I'm sure you've noticed over the last, decade at least, that teachers have been the butt of the punchline of the joke, or the target of the arrow or the attack. It seems like it was in vogue for a while to go after teachers. Now we got one who's running for vice president. Maybe someone starts to go, hey, I know that guy.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, teachers have really taken it on the chin, but not because we're teachers, because people who have a value system that want to control our kids, they want to control the curriculum, they want to control who goes to what schools and who doesn't, the haves and have-nots. And so we've got to not only be about pedagogy, but we've got to be about policy. And so our policies these policies have directly impacted our classrooms, from high stakes testing to, teacher pay being tied to those tests, to not having enough equipment or resources or technology in schools. This is our chance to really have someone who can speak to those issues from the inside out. And so we could not be happier with the pick of Tim Walz. We believe that it's going to put the energy in this campaign, and is going to put a value system that our kids are going to be first. Yeah,
you said energy in this campaign. I got to tell you, a month ago, I wasn't feeling it. Now it's electric. Are you? I'm sure you're seeing the same thing.
Well, it is, and listen, kudos to President Biden, who really has done a yeoman's job over the last 4 years as it relates to labor and educational policies. We've seen a change and a shift in what we have, not seen before that, where we had this, as you mentioned, this visceral attack on public education. But now there is a new energy. There's a synergy that's out there. People are really feeling the electricity. You can see it in the campaigns. You can see it in the rallies. You can hear it in the messaging that we're going forward. We're not going backwards. And we're trying to add, not subtract from the base of people who really care about students and education, teachers, and the like. So listen, everywhere I go, from every corner, from every city, every state, we are well traveled throughout in the AFT, led by our president, Randy Weingarten, who is scouring the country to make sure that the voice of teachers and healthcare members and public services are at the forefront of every conversation.
You brought up policy, and clearly we're in a moment right now where there could not be a more stark difference between the campaigns. You've got on the Harris Walls ticket a former teacher, you had football coach, state championship, all that stuff. Army vet. You've got on the other side Project 2025, brought to us by an extremely corporate, conservative, right-wing, extremist think tank in the Heritage Foundation that's going to make patronage great again. That's going to destroy and repeal the 20th century. I don't think there's much of a thing to argue about. It's stark differences between them. So help me walk through Project 2025 as you see it. If Trump wins and he gets what they want from him, what is education going to look like in this country?
Well, listen, what we know is what education should look like. We know what the problems are in education. We have a teacher shortage around America that we have not seen the likes of in about 50 years. There are teacher shortages in every school district in America. And that's because we have not been very friendly to the teachers that we have. We've got to try to retain the teachers that we have. We've got to compensate them, and we've got to treat them and respect them for the professionals that they are. Project 2025 throws all of that out the window. It throws respect out the window. It says that we will segregate our schools again. We will have the haves and have-nots. It talks about voucher programs, which are at the core of racial separatism and trying to make sure that kids don't interact with each other. It's almost a reversal of this Brown versus Board, because voucher systems in charter schools seek to separate and divide communities. And that's not what we need. That's not what the cornerstone of education is supposed to be about: kids and getting together, making sure that they can take care of each other and their fellow man. It also talks about Project 2025, this skewed version of history. And so where we teach some history and we don't teach other history, and we try to do revisionist history as though slavery didn't exist, as though Black folks and Latino folks are not as important as others who have been here, that where we don't lean into the indigenous history that was here long before the settlers. And so we've got to really understand what that policy is trying to do. It is really going to do some damage to our challenged communities, to Black and Brown communities, to LGBTQ communities. We've seen it in my home state of Florida, where they're trying to condemn the word gay, not have certain books on shelves because they lean into having a student understand really who they are and what they want to be in life. And so, I could go on and on with this Project 25. It is a 900-page evisceration of what we know is human public policy. And it stands for nothing but divide and conquer. And so if Trump is in office, then let me tell you something. This country is going to be set back years, decades, in fact. And there's going to be a lot of hurt and a lot of pain to a lot of people in this country, because he's already told us on day one what he wants to do. He wants to be a dictator. And so somebody who's coming in with a backwards vision of making the country great again and not looking forward and talking about our better days are ahead, then we've really got to watch that kind of language, because that language turns into action, that action turns into policy, and policies can either help or hurt people.
No, you're spot on. And I say all the time, they want to return us to the good old days of the 80s and 90s and not the 1980s and 90s, because they do. They want to make America great again, like it was in the 1890s, where we had children working in factories and in mines. And you look at their policies, the policies out of Project 2025 and policies we've seen across the states, where we're letting kids, if you finish 8th grade, you can go work on industrial farms. We're making child labor great again, which, as parents across this country, we should be angry about, we should be marching in the streets about, but they, with a straight face, write this in their document.
Yeah, they do. I've been listening to these reports of these right-wing extremists talk about this Project 2025, talk about Donald Trump as president. And it's amazing how, with, like you said, a straight face, with some type of skewed honesty. They come on and get in front of folks and lie to them. And they tell people that this is going to be good for America. And in no way would you want your child to study Donald Trump, to lead like Donald Trump. You wouldn't want your child to be like Donald Trump. This is not what we want for the moral fabric of our country. If we want division and chaos, if we want confusion about who should be where, if we want public policies that will lean towards the super rich and not towards the middle class and build this thing from the middle out, then maybe we should do that. But I'm here to tell you that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, they are upholding values that this country was built on, and that's by, for, and about people. That's everyday people who scratch pennies together to try to pay the rent and work hard every day, people who are taking care of their Asian grandparents, people who are taking care of a sick kid. That's who we want to help. We want health care for everybody. We want to make sure that you can retire with some modicum of dignity after working a lifetime on a job. No,
and it's that kind of respect that I think, we're fighting for. And I think this ticket, because I've been listening to Kamala Harris since she's stepped into the spotlight. She's talking about labor rights. She's talking about making lives better. I love the fact that Tim Walz is, past paid sick leave, ended, captive audience meetings, banned non-competes. A lot of really very solidly pro-working class kind of legislation and policy that I'd love to see on the federal level. So for me, this is a great pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've said it all. Listen, some of the policies that have been happening in Minnesota, need to be broadbanded and pushed throughout the country. And so we're all for it. There are many things that we have to do in terms of the labor community, in terms of organized labor, making sure that we hold our constituencies together, making sure that we get the information out, making sure that the message is right, that we're not going back. We are going forward in this country, and forward in this country means strong unions. Forward in this country means, getting a decent job that you can take care of your family and get that house and live out what this thing called the American dream. Those are the things that we espouse to. And we do that first and foremost through taking care of our young people, to making sure that they have a place to learn, a place to grow, and a place to live, and that their space is safe. And then we do that on the opposite end of the spectrum, making sure that our elders are taken care of, making sure that they can retire in dignity after working 30, 40 years on the job, and ensuring that if they have health issues, which, as an elder you will, that you can go to the hospital with a pre-existing condition and still get treatment for that. And then we care about, the overall safety of our country, both domestically and internationally. And so with Tim Walz and Vice President Kamala Harris, we're going to make sure that we do everything that we can as a union to get the word out, get the message out, and make sure that people have the right information, not just information, the right factual information, so that they can make an educated choice to put these two folks in office.
No, and it's going to be an uphill climb because, look, the right-wing corporate-controlled media, if you've been watching how they cover Trump, there's a lot of forgiveness there, and they report every blathering, idiotic statement he comes out with as it's some kind of genius. I'm hoping that changes, but it's up to you and other educators to get out there, set the record straight, help us work through some critical thinking skills, and help us find the right factual information, not this alternative nonsense.
That's right. Listen, unions have always found themselves in the worst of times. They've always found the best of themselves. And so I'm really ecstatic. This is a pivotal time. It's a challenging time, but it was a challenging time in the 20s. When unions banded together. It was a challenging times in the civil rights movement when unions stuck together to make sure that we got the title programs, that we got the Voting Rights Act, that all of these things were in place. It was a challenging time in 2006 and 2007, 2008, when we had to make sure that this country wasn't going to go back, that we were going to move forward. And so unions have really found their way. And I will also add this, unions are at an all-time high on almost every poll in America that tells you that people want a union. Our young people understand the social and civic value of being together, of having a united voice, so that we can amplify ourselves and making sure that we band together, that there's strength in numbers. And so we're going to do that. We're going to use all of that, and we're going to make sure that we're getting people this information. We'll be out marching, knocking on doors, making phone calls, and putting, as my dad called it, axe to the grind, and making sure that we chop this tree down. And we're going to vote and make sure that we get the right people in office.
There you go. Last thing I got for you. During Thursday's press conference down at Mar-a-Lago, Trump said that his January 6th speech, where he riled everybody up to go attack to the Capitol, was more attended than Martin Luther King's Million Man March. I'm curious, delusional or revisionist history or just plain wrong?
I'll use the words of Tim Walz, just weird. It's just a weird situation in two ways, right? That you can get a person on television who is supposed to have a position of power and respect, and people don't laugh him off, right? If it wasn't so serious and so germane to what we have to do, it would actually be a comedy show. But it's not. It's very serious that this man can get on TV and tell outright lies and have, almost try to get, have this revisionist history as though he had nothing to do with a full all-out assault on the Capitol, with an insurrection where people died, where officers were injured and died in what he called, we're going to go down to the Capitol and tell them, where his own vice president was in danger. His life was in danger and no longer supports him for these efforts. So those are the kinds of things that we've got to get out and speak truth to power, because it is so serious that this man can get on TV and tell lie after lie after lie, and people take him seriously. Something is really wrong in our country when that type of ideology succeeds. And so we've got to make sure that there is no success in that, because our children deserve better, our schools deserve better, teachers and all of our healthcare members who save lives, real lives, every single day. And they're really just trying to make ends meet. But these folks are going to turn into the voters, the super voters that we need all across this country to make sure that we right the ship to this country.
No, you're right. The revisionist history that evidently, according to Trump, there was a bloodless transfer of power and it was peaceful, according to him, in 2020. I don't know what he was watching, but Fed, I appreciate the time. Great stuff. Look forward to having you back again real soon.
Thank you now. I appreciate it.
Fed Ingram, AFT Secretary Treasurer. Check out their website, aft.org. Want to hear your thoughts. Are you buying what Trump's laying down, or are you ready for some serious change? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day that young women workers at the YH Trading Company in Seoul, South Korea, staged a sit-in strike. The women made wigs for export. The company had been one of the leading exporters in the nation. But then the managers began to move the profits from the wig company to a shipping company under the same ownership, as well as to a film production company. This drained the profits from the wig factory and left it in massive debt. The owners shut down the company without warning, firing all of the employees. These women did not only lose their jobs. Water and electricity were turned off at the factory dormitories where the workers lived. A union represented the young women. The union planned a strike at the building, but the police were called in to break it up. The workers decided to move their protest to the local headquarters of the New Democratic Party. The party was in opposition to the leader of Seoul, President Park Chung-hee. The fired women were welcomed at the New Democratic Party headquarters. There, they decided to stage a sit-in to bring attention to their situation. The workers' sit-in only lasted 3 days. Then 1,000 police stormed the building. They overturned furniture and broke windows. They dragged the women out of the building violently. One woman, 21-year-old Kim Young-suk, died in the raid. She fell from the roof of the building in a clash with the police. 4 of the union leaders were sent to prison. more than 200 of the workers were expelled out of the city of Seoul and sent back home to rural areas. Today's Labor History in 2 brought to you in memory of Carol Hillman, a passionate friend of workers and volunteer of the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. So, in talking with Fed, my mind keeps going back to this Project 2025, which we've been hearing a lot about, which Trump and his ilk are trying to run away from, because it is their policy basis. It is. Understand, Trump doesn't have an actual ideology. He doesn't have an actual policy. Doesn't have an actual policy background. So he's a guy who, quite frankly, has had other people do his homework for him throughout his whole life. So the fact that the Heritage Foundation is going to lay out his platform for him and do his homework for him, kind of speaks volumes. They missed the boat on his first administration. Understand, they didn't get behind him in 2016. The think tank world thought he was a joke, didn't think he stood a chance, and didn't forge the relationships and the policies that they wanted to move because they didn't think he had a chance, like a lot of people. They're not making that mistake this time around. They're all in. They've laid out in this 900-page document basically their wet dream list. This is everything they wanted. And on the education front, it shouldn't be surprising to anyone who's been paying attention that it's their goal to get their hand into the education funding pot. It's always been their goal to privatize and profitize education, make it accessible for the wealthy and the well-connected, and just functional enough to get people showing up to work, to keep them on the treadmill of working in crummy jobs just to survive, while the handful get the profit. Now, understand, Project 2025 wants to eliminate the federal Department of Education because they don't think the federal government should have anything to do with education, but they want the money. And if you look at Project 2025, they're fairly explicit. They want to end Title I funding, which really goes to help lower income schools to be able to afford to exist. And they want to go to a no strings attached block grant system. They're going to give a whole bunch of money to the State Department of Education, and they're going to be able to dole it out based on, don't know. They could set them up to be, private accounts for, what's the buzzword now? The education savings accounts that we're going to give kids, and they're going to have a backpack full of money, and they'll be able to go wherever they want, except if the backpack doesn't have enough money in it. So the private schools that your kids may get to go to, or my kids get to go to, are not the private schools that the Trump folk are going to, or even Obama. Look, for me, this isn't partisan. This is about ensuring that there's an education system in this country that every kid gets an equal shot. And that's not what we've had. And it's certainly not where Project 2025 is going to take us. This idea that we're going to have no strings attached block grants for low income schools, for kids with disabilities, we're going to give the states block grants to spend, however they want on educational expenses. Now, we've seen in states that go, here, parents, have a boatload of money. This is your kids' education money. Go spend it on education things. And they buy big screen TVs and vacations and all kinds of stuff like that. We've already seen this movie. They want to magnify what you see in places like Florida to a national level. Because again, this is about ensuring that, one, they make a lot of money, that they get their paws on that education money. Education incorporation is a huge, huge windfall for them. Lots of profit, stealing your children's future. Now, also want to, basically do away with what Title IX, Title VI funding, and again, we're gonna let that go back to the states. We don't want the federal government worrying about prohibitions on education based on sex or race. No, we don't want that. We want the states to decide this. Ultimately, we want crazy people to decide this. Is what they're telling us. They're being very honest. And they want states to be able to opt out of federal programs, because, the state should be able. And look, I'm actually not horribly opposed to that. If your state doesn't want federal money, you don't have to take it. In fact, I've often said we should be using federal money to ensure that they do the things that we need them to do, which is to provide a solid education for every student and create critical thinkers, not ideologues. Create citizens who can look at someone like Donald Trump, for instance, who lies. Like, there's a guy, as my grandfather says, there's a guy who would lie when the truth would be better. And we saw that in his press conference on Thursday. As I talked about earlier, it's amazing to me that anyone is still wearing the red hat unless the ink from the red hat is bled into their head and caused some serious, maybe some worms. Maybe some brain worms like RFK Jr. But we're in a moment where the 20th century is under attack. They want to put kids back into dangerous jobs. They want to steal your children's future. And that's not hyperbole. They've written it down. It's in a 900-page document called Project 2025. They want, well, not your kids or my kids, poor kids, like I used to be when I was younger. They want those kids to be, well, desperate, pliable, cheap. Because, I don't know if you noticed, but cheap labor is good for profits. It really is. I mean, the CEOs, it's like their heroin. So for me, education, again, one of those battlegrounds where voters had better really take a look at the differences between Trump and the differences between Harris and a school teacher. And from what I'm told, pretty darn good one at that. I want to hear your thoughts, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Am I missing something here? If you miss any of the show, like I said, podcast, freespeech.org, go there. And as always, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.